Hi, I'm Sly Grandpa. Let's start our story. I'll admit something right here, right now, before this whole thing unravels. I let them think I was losing my mind. That's the part people don't believe when they hear my story. They think old age is a slow betrayal you can't control. They think memory slips, confusion, forgetting where you put your keys, it all just happens to you, and you're too far gone to notice. But that's not how it works. Sometimes you see the trap being set, and instead of fighting it, you lean into it. You play along. You make yourself smaller, weaker, easier to underestimate. That's exactly what I did when my daughter-in-law, Claire, started whispering to my family that I was slipping. She was clever about it at first. Nothing too direct. Just little comments slipped in during Sunday dinners. Did you notice Dad repeated that story twice, or, he seems so tired lately, maybe we should get him checked out. Always with that tone of fake concern. Polite, almost sweet. The kind of tone people use when they're planting a seed they know will grow into something poisonous. And my son, God bless him, he wanted to believe the best. He brushed it off at first. But then came the incidents. My mail going missing. Bills unpaid that I swear I had handled. My medications misplaced. Keys gone from the hook where I always left them. At first, I thought it was just bad luck. But then, one evening, I caught Claire in my study. She had no business being there. She jumped when I walked in, mumbled something about looking for a pen, and hurried off. I should have called her out. Should have raised hell right then. But I didn't. Because in that moment, something clicked, she wanted me to fight. She wanted me to defend myself, to look paranoid, unstable, just like she was telling everyone. So instead, I smiled at her. I let her walk away thinking I was harmless. Meanwhile, I started taking notes. Every detail. Every word. Every slip of hers. Because here's what nobody in my family knows, before I was a grandfather, before I was a widower living quietly in my too-big house. I was something else entirely. I've written things down that even my son doesn't know about, pages of codes, dates, operations. Habits of keeping track. Habits of never forgetting. Claire thinks she's playing chess with an old man whose memory is fading. But the truth is, she just sat down across the board from someone who used to win wars without ever firing a shot. And now? Now I've decided to let the game begin. The first crack in her story came on a Tuesday morning. I remember it because I made sure to. Claire had been dropping by more often, always with that excuse of helping me stay organized. She'd shuffle my mail into little piles, open drawers she had no business opening, and comment, just loud enough for my son to hear, about how complicated things must feel for me these days. That morning, she walked into the kitchen and found me holding the TV remote upside down, squinting at it like I couldn't figure out what it was. Truth is, I'd been watching the news just fine 10 minutes before she arrived. But when she stepped in, I flipped it in my hand and tilted my head like it was some alien contraption. "Oh, Dad," she said, in that syrupy voice that could rot teeth. "Don't worry, I'll help you with this. These new gadgets can be so confusing." I watched her practically glow with satisfaction as she explained to me how the buttons worked. She couldn't hide her excitement. She thought she'd caught me in the act of being helpless. And sure enough, that evening I overheard her whispering to my son in the hallway. He didn't even know how to work the remote. "I'm honestly worried about him, honey. What if something happens while he's alone?" I sat in my chair, keeping my face blank, while my son's silence cut me deeper than her words. That was the first time I faked it. The first time I leaned into her little performance. Because I wanted to see how far she'd go, how much rope she'd give me. But here's the thing, while she thought I was sitting in that armchair, slowly unraveling, I was actually making copies. Every bank statement, every insurance document, every legal paper she might try to get her claws into, I scanned them, hid the originals, and tucked the duplicates in places no one would think to look. I wasn't just protecting myself. I was setting the stage. That night, I took out one of my old journals. The kind my family thinks is just filled with crossword puzzles and grocery lists. I opened to a blank page and started a new entry, but not in plain English. No, I wrote in the same shorthand I used back in the service, coded notations that would look like gibberish to anyone else. That journal would become my ledger. My proof. My weapon. And while Claire thought she was winning, what she didn't know was this: I'd already started documenting her every move. Because here's the funny thing about being underestimated: people stop watching you closely. They stop being careful. And that's when they slip. I'll tell you something Claire never figured out: this house isn't as ordinary as it looks. I bought it decades ago, back when I still had contacts in places most people don't even know exist. Let's just say, when you've spent part of your life working intelligence, you develop a certain paranoia. And paranoia builds habits. Like wiring a few quiet recording devices in key rooms of your home. Harmless, I know, but back then, it gave me peace of mind. Funny thing is, I'd almost forgotten they were there. Until Claire gave me a reason to check. One afternoon, she offered, so generously, to help me with my online banking. My son had suggested it after hearing her drone on about how I might miss a payment. So I played along, sat at the desk, and let her hover behind me like a hawk. She guided me through logging in, smiling the whole time, until she accidentally clicked the option to add a new authorized user. Her fingers moved too fast for it to be a mistake. She typed in her own name. She was bold enough to try it right in front of me. Of course, she cancelled out before hitting submit. Just testing the waters, seeing if I'd notice. I pretended I didn't. I scratched my head, mumbled something about not remembering passwords, and thanked her for the help. But later that night, I pulled the memory card from the recorder hidden in my study lamp. And there it was, her voice, clear as a bell, guiding herself right into my accounts. I sat there in the dark, listening to her soft little giggle when she typed in her name. That fake sweet giggle she used when she thought she'd outsmarted everyone. I could have shown the recording to my son right then. Could have blown her whole act apart in a single evening. But I didn't. Because I realized something: one recording wasn't enough. No, if I showed my hand too early, she'd spin it. Claim it was taken out of context, say she was just testing the system for me. She's clever enough to wriggle out of one piece of evidence. So I made a choice: let her keep digging. Let her keep trying. And every time, I'd be waiting, recording, documenting, writing it all down in my coded journal. Because the sweetest revenge isn't just stopping someone. It's letting them believe they're unstoppable, right up until the moment they're not. And Claire. She was about to get reckless. If you want to ruin someone quietly, you don't go after their money first. You go after their connections. Their lifelines. Their people. Claire knew that. She started nudging my son to check in less, saying I got tired easily. She took over answering calls from my granddaughter, always with a quick excuse about why I couldn't come to the phone. When my brother tried to drop by, she intercepted him at the door with that pitying little shake of her head. He's napping a lot these days. Doesn't remember things like he used to. What she didn't count on was that I'd notice. When you've lived through wars, you learn the subtle signs of being cut off. The walls don't go up all at once, they get built brick by brick. So I decided to test just how far she'd take it. We were at Sunday dinner, the whole family together. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, laughter, except my seat at the table felt colder than it used to. Claire had planted herself beside my son, her hand on his arm whenever I spoke, like she was steadying him against my confusion. Halfway through the meal, I let my fork clatter to the plate. Everyone froze. I frowned, looked around the table slowly, and asked in a low, uncertain voice. "Where's Margaret?" My wife's been gone for 9 years. Everyone at that table knew it. My granddaughter's face crumpled. My son's hand tightened around his glass. And Claire? Oh, she practically beamed. She reached across the table to pat my hand. "Oh, Dad," she cooed, "Margaret's been gone for a long time. Don't you remember?" The room went silent. Just long enough for the tension to wrap around everyone's throat. Then I let out a shaky breath, muttered something about "must have slipped my mind," and dropped my gaze. It was perfect. They thought they'd just witnessed a heartbreaking symptom of decline. But what they didn't know was this. 2 nights before, I'd taken my wife's photo down from the hallway wall and tucked it in a drawer. So when I asked, I could truthfully say I hadn't seen her around. That one little slip planted exactly what I needed: doubt. Not in me, in them. Doubt about whether I could live independently. Doubt about my memory. Doubt that would make Claire bolder, hungrier. And sure enough, after dinner, I caught her slipping into the kitchen with her phone. I stayed quiet in the hall and listened. She was whispering to someone, couldn't catch it all, but one word I heard loud and clear: lawyer. That was the night I realized she wasn't just setting me up for embarrassment. She was setting me up for elimination. A week after that dinner, I found an envelope slipped among my bills. No return address, but the handwriting on the front was neat, deliberate. Not the scrawl of junk mail. It was addressed to me. Inside was a short, typed letter. Only a few sentences. Mr. K, I'm reaching out on behalf of Claire. We understand you may be interested in updating your estate plans. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience. Estate plans. My blood went cold. I hadn't contacted anyone about my will, my house, my accounts. I hadn't even hinted at it. Yet here was a lawyer, reaching out on behalf of Claire. That's when it hit me: she wasn't just whispering in my son's ear. She was already moving the chess pieces outside the house. Getting her allies in place. Lining up the paperwork so by the time anyone realized, I'd be signed over, powerless, tucked away somewhere, for my own good. Now, here's the part she didn't know. That letter? It wasn't sealed. Just tucked into the envelope. Like someone wanted me to see it, someone who maybe had doubts about what Claire was doing. I put the letter back exactly as I found it. I didn't confront anyone. Not yet. Instead, I slid it into the hollowed-out back of one of my old war books. The same book where I've kept other little relics. Old habits die hard. But here's the real twist: I recognized the stationery. Not the words, not the law office, but the faint watermark of the paper itself. I'd seen it before, years ago, when I was keeping records that no one in this family knows I kept. See, when you've worked in intelligence, you learn to notice the invisible. The way a typewriter strikes just slightly off-center. The faint discoloration of ink. The tiny, repeating patterns in expensive paper. Someone wanted me to connect the dots. Someone out there knew what was happening, and was giving me breadcrumbs. That night, I sat at my desk and opened my coded journal. I wrote down the lawyer's name, the phone number, the watermark, every tiny detail. But not in English. Not in a way anyone could read. Only I could make sense of it. Because Claire thought she was pulling strings behind the curtain. What she didn't know was that she wasn't the only one with secrets tucked in the dark. There's a kind of patience that comes with being old. Not the polite kind, real patience. The kind that sits at the edge of a storm and lets the rain find its own rhythm. I've had a lifetime of storms. I've learned when to move and when to wait. Claire was getting bolder. Little tests, then bigger ones. The seed letters, the lawyer, the whispered lawyer s in the kitchen. She'd graduated to more overt attempts. Documents appeared on the table now: brochures about assisted living, forms for simplified account management, and once, a half-filled power of attorney form in my handwriting, or so it looked. Someone had copied my signature well enough to make my stomach sick. That night I didn't throw a fit. I didn't yell. I went to the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror, and did something very, very old school. I smiled like I was about to enjoy myself. Here's what I did. I knew she would need a piece of paper she could wave where other people would see it and take it as gospel. People like her prefer the visible proof, the official-looking thing you can slap on a desk and point to. See? He signed. So I made her one. I sat at my desk and printed a clean, tidy-looking authorization form that looked like the one she tried to bring up online. It had her name as the proposed authorized user. It had my name. It had dates. It looked convincing enough to anyone who skimmed it. But I didn't make it to move money. I made it to get her to move. There are tiny tricks you learn when your day job involved reading things no one else notices. Microprint that flows like nonsense, a faint, repeating watermark visible only at an angle, a line of microink that requires ultraviolet light to read. I added all that, little things that would do nothing to slow a common scammer, but things that, if triggered, would alert the people I still trust inside the system. And then I left it exactly where she'd find it. On top of my bank statements, folded to show only the signature line. But my real trap was a message she would hear as a confirmation, a gentle shove toward action. I used my phone in an old trick. Years ago, we used to send dead drops in coded voice tags. The voice would say one thing to some ears and something else to trained ears. I recorded a short voicemail and left it on the answering machine my son insists on keeping. Claire checks that machine obsessively, part curiosity, part control. She loves the illusion of being the first to know. The voicemail was a sweet little thing, a confused sounding me saying, "Claire, dear, thank you for helping me with the bank forms. Please go ahead and bring the signed papers to the bank tomorrow, tell them Margaret's photo is in the drawer, you know which. Love, Dad." It sounded half forgetful and perfectly plausible. It sounded like an old man who needed help. It was exactly the breadcrumb she wanted. But embedded in that same file, in a frequency she'd never notice and a phrase she'd never catch, was a trigger for my friend Marta at the bank. Years ago Marta had looked after my accounts and, more importantly, we'd kept each other's backs. She'd retired to a quieter desk but her heart still beat fast for the old routine. If she heard a certain 5-note tone followed by a garbled word, she'd check the flagged box folder and call me. I added that tone. I added the garble. It was childish, maybe, but it was our handshake. So when Claire found the paper and listened to the message, she felt triumphant. She spent the rest of the night rehearsing her little speech for the bank. "He signed this. He wants this. Please make it official." She texted her friend about it in that flinty, self-satisfied way people do when they are convinced they've caught lightning in a bottle. I went to bed and slept like a man who has done his paperwork. Not because I believed the trap would work perfectly, but because I had layered it. Documents, recordings, contacts. Red threads everywhere. Morning came. I made my tea. I walked down the hallway and stood where I could see the street through the curtains. I heard Claire's car start outside. She'd be pleased with herself today. I heard the house empty, footsteps and the car door slam. 30 minutes later, my old phone, a little brick that still sits on my bedside table, buzzed. Marta's voice, low and tight, said, "Heard something. 2 signatures off. She's here. Stay put." My heart jumped, the way it always did when a plan started to move. Not from fear. From a strange, sharp pleasure. It's a feeling like remembering how to ride a bike after years. The body knows before the mind does. And then, as if someone had timed it, my son called. He sounded tired and a little distracted. "Dad," he said. "They called me at work. There's a woman at the bank with your forms." "Who is she?" I could hear Claire's voice behind him for a beat, her laugh, maybe an "I told you so." My son asked one more thing, something that mattered more than anything he'd asked in months. "Are you okay? Are you sure you're handling things?" I said the only thing that would keep him from rushing over, "Yes, I'm fine." My voice was steady, almost bored. "I'm making tea. Everything's fine." He hesitated. "All right. If you need." "No," I cut him off gently. "I'm fine." He hung up, and I closed my eyes for a second, letting him walk away. I felt the threads tighten. Then the knock came. Not on my door, on the front window. 3 quick, almost polite raps. I went to the window and peered through the curtain. A woman in a navy coat stood on the sidewalk, a leather folder clutched like armor. Her hair was pulled back. She smiled at me with professional warmth. It wasn't Claire. It was someone else, someone I didn't expect. She turned, raised one hand in a quick half-bow, and lifted the folder in a small, almost secretive way. My heart did that thing again. The game had just picked up speed. And whoever she was, she held something that might change everything. I pulled back from the window and reached for my journal. The folder on the lawn snapped open in my memory like a blade. Inside, not just papers, but a color photocopy with a rubber stamp across the corner. A stamp I thought I'd seen only in my past. I wrote down the time in my coded shorthand and set the page with a neat line. Because games have rules. And every move reveals something. What I didn't know at that exact second, as I stood with the curtain string in my hand, was who had come to my door and whether she was friend or foe. But I knew this: Claire had just taken the bait. And whatever she planned to do next would either prove her brilliant or prove her reckless enough to be destroyed. The knock on the front door came again, this time louder, impatient. Someone called, in a voice I didn't recognize, "Mr. K." "Mr. K, we need to talk about the papers." I tightened my jaw, flipped the kettle off, and walked to the door. When I finally opened the door, I kept the chain lock on. Never a mistake to be cautious. She smiled politely, professional, the kind of smile meant to lower defenses. "Mr. K?" she asked. "My name's Ms. Redford. I'm with First Harbor Bank's compliance office. May I come in?" Her voice was steady, but her eyes were cataloging. "The way soldiers do. The way we used to." I didn't answer right away. I let her stew. I wanted to see if she'd fill the silence. Most people will. And she did. "We had an unusual interaction today," she continued, lowering her tone. "A woman came in with what appeared to be authorization documents for your accounts. Our staff flagged it. I wanted to bring it to you directly." Her folder shifted in her hands. She pressed her thumb against its edge like it wasn't just a folder, but something heavier. "Describe the woman," I said finally. My voice didn't shake, though I leaned on the doorframe like an old man might. "She said her name was Claire," Redford replied. "Your daughter-in-law." I let out a breath, soft and tired, the act I'd perfected. "Ah. Yes. Claire. She helps me sometimes." Redford's smile twitched. Not in triumph. In recognition. She knew I was playing a role. I'd seen that twitch before, in a mirror, decades ago, when I was on the other side of this kind of conversation. She passed an envelope through the crack of the door. "We didn't process the paperwork. You should know, it wasn't just a forgery. It was a poor forgery. 2 signatures traced, 1 line mismatched. Amateur work." I took the envelope and nodded slowly. "Thank you." She tilted her head, studying me. "Sir, if I may, you don't seem surprised." And there it was. The opening. The test. I smiled. The kind of smile that has no warmth, just teeth. "That's because I'm not." Her eyes sharpened. She knew she'd just stepped into something bigger than bank fraud. "I'll be in touch," she said quickly, and turned down the walk. No wasted words, no fuss. Just a quiet retreat. I shut the door and carried the envelope to my desk. Inside were copies of the forged forms. Claire's name, my shaky signature, dates lined up just enough to fool someone who wanted to be fooled. But here's the strange part: stamped in the corner of one page was a symbol. Not the bank's seal. Not any official insignia. Something else. A circle with 3 slashes through it. I hadn't seen it in 40 years. It wasn't Claire's doing. She wouldn't know a symbol like that if it was tattooed on her hand. That mark meant one thing: someone from my past was involved. Someone who knew exactly who I used to be. And that meant this wasn't just about family. This was about unfinished business. Claire was furious when she got home from the bank. I didn't need to hear the words, her heels on the hardwood said enough. A staccato rhythm, sharp, angry, not the fake sweet shuffle she used when playing caretaker. She didn't mention the bank visit directly. Instead, she launched into a performance in front of my son. "Your dad's getting worse. He left the stove on today. I had to rush in before the whole house burned down." It was a good lie. The kind that preys on fear, the kind that leaves just enough plausibility for a son to hesitate before doubting his wife. My boy turned to me, his brow furrowed. "Dad, did that happen?" I shrugged, eyes down, hands folded like a scolded child. Maybe. I can't remember. That answer gutted him. I saw it. That little flicker of heartbreak. And I let it sit there, because heartbreak makes people careless. After dinner, I made my move. While Claire was loading dishes, I shuffled into the living room, acting dazed, and tucked a small, folded scrap of paper between the couch cushions where she always sat. The paper held what looked like a shaky note in my handwriting. Bank papers confusing. Think I signed something. Claire says it's okay. Hope I did right. I even dotted the I with a little waver, the way my hand trembles when I want it to. Then I left the room and waited. Later that night, I heard her rustling on the couch. A sharp intake of breath. The quiet slide of paper being pocketed. She thought she'd found gold, a little confession she could dangle in front of my son, proof that I was admitting confusion, that I trusted her judgment with finances. But she didn't know that same note had another layer. Written in ink so faint it looks like nothing in lamplight. Only under the right kind of bulb does the second message appear. Claire found this. If you're reading, I left it for her. Watch what she does next. That message wasn't for her. It was for my son. Because one day, he'd stumble across the truth. And when he did, he'd realize I'd been steps ahead the whole time. See, Claire thought she'd collected evidence of my decline. But really? I'd just given her the rope. And I was curious to see how tightly she'd pull it. It came 2 Sundays later. Claire had that bright, brittle energy women get when they've planned something behind closed doors. She fussed over the roast, poured wine she never usually opened, even ironed the napkins. My son looked uneasy, like a man dragged into a performance he didn't rehearse for. My granddaughter sat quietly, sensing tension the way kids do. After dinner, Claire clinked her glass. We need to talk about Dad. I set my fork down slowly, head tilted. The picture of harmless confusion. She launched in, he's slipping. He left the stove on, he forgets Margaret, he's signing things without understanding them. It's not safe for him to be alone anymore. We should think about moving him somewhere he'll be cared for properly. Every word dripped with pity, but her eyes gleamed with triumph. She thought she was closing the net. My son shifted in his seat. Claire. But she cut him off, sliding her ace onto the table, the note I'd planted in the couch cushions. She unfolded it with delicate fingers, voice trembling just enough to sell it. Look. He even wrote this himself. He's confused about the bank papers. He said he just hoped he did right. He admitted it. She passed it across the table. My son read it, face tightening. My granddaughter leaned forward, biting her lip. I leaned back, eyes cloudy, and asked softly, did I write that? Claire pounced. Yes, Dad. You did. Don't you remember? Silence. Then I let out a laugh. Just a soft, shaky chuckle. Well, if it's in my handwriting, must be true. They all stared at me. My son looked devastated. Claire looked smug. Exactly what I wanted. Because what nobody noticed, what nobody ever notices, is that I tucked a second scrap of paper deep in my pocket. Identical handwriting. Same style. Only this one read. I think Claire is trying to trick me with bank papers. I hope I'm wrong. Please help me. I left it folded in my jacket, where I knew my granddaughter liked to sneak sweets when she hugged me goodbye. She'd find it later, quietly, innocently. The meeting ended with heavy silence. My son rubbed his temples. Claire patted my hand like she was already my guardian. But when they all left, I poured myself a drink and opened my coded journal. I wrote down one line, neat and sharp. First move complete. Claire believes she's winning. And she was. Right up until the moment she wasn't. The thing about liars is they get addicted to their own stories. After the family meeting, Claire was high on her performance. She wanted more. She wanted me humiliated in front of witnesses. So she tried a stunt. One evening, she came over with my son and granddaughter. Brought a tray of cookies, sat us all down in the living room like it was story hour. Then she pulled out a stack of flashcards. "I read about this online," she said, smiling wide. "A little memory exercise. It could help Dad, and it'll show us how he's really doing." My son looked uncomfortable. "Claire." But she was already holding up the first card, a photo of an apple. Then a house. Then a clock. "Okay, Dad," she said sweetly. "I'll show you a few, then ask you to repeat them back." I blinked at the cards, scratching my chin. "Oh dear. That seems hard." She beamed. She thought she had me cornered. She ran through a dozen cards, dog, tree, car, book, and then set them aside. "All right," she said. "Now, what do you remember?" I rubbed my forehead, stammered a little, gave her 3 wrong answers on purpose. My granddaughter's face fell. My son sighed. Claire smiled like a cat with cream on its whiskers. Then I asked, soft as a prayer, "Did I get any right?" "A few," she said gently. "But that's okay. We'll work on it." I nodded, and then, very quietly, I repeated every single word back to her. In order. Apple, house, clock, dog, tree, car, book. Every damn one. The room went dead silent. My granddaughter clapped. My son blinked like he didn't know what he'd just seen. And Claire? Her face drained of color. I smiled at her, soft and empty. "Guess I'm not as far gone as you thought, dear." She tried to laugh it off, but the damage was done. The forgetful old man had just aced her test, and everyone saw her glee vanish in real time. Later that night, I sat at my desk and wrote in my coded journal. Test passed. Her credibility cracked. Because that's the thing about people like Claire, they can weave lies all day, but one moment of truth can unravel the whole thread. And I had just pulled the first one loose. The trick with bait is making it look like you dropped it by mistake. So one afternoon, I left my little handheld recorder sitting out on my desk. Not hidden in the lamp, not tucked in a drawer, just sitting there with the red light blinking. A fisherman's lure, gleaming in the water. I knew Claire couldn't resist. Sure enough, while I pretended to nap in my chair, I heard her soft footsteps in the study. A pause. Then the faint click as she stopped the recording. She thought she'd caught me out. And what did she hear when she played it back later? A mumbling old man, talking to himself. "I can't remember if I paid the insurance. I hope Claire helps me. She's the only one I can trust now." Pathetic. Vulnerable. Exactly the kind of confession she wanted. But here's what she didn't know, the file had 2 layers. My old recorder had been modified years ago by a friend. Hit the right playback speed, and you get a second track, hidden beneath the first. To an untrained ear, it's just static. But to someone who knows, it's a clear, sharp voice. That hidden track wasn't meant for Claire. It was for the bank's compliance officer, Ms. Redford, the woman who came to my door. I'd already tipped her off to the system. She'd be able to decode it. And on that hidden layer, my voice was crisp as a bell. Evidence being gathered. Subject, Claire. Attempted forgery, manipulation, elder abuse. Date and time stamped. This recording was left intentionally for her to find. Expect escalation. So while Claire strutted around the house, certain she'd secured proof of my decline, what she really carried was proof of herself, a breadcrumb in my chain of evidence, one more piece in the trap. That night, I watched her slip the recorder into her purse, thinking she'd scored. My son didn't even notice. I sipped my tea, calm as ever, and wrote one more line in my coded journal. She carries the seed of her own undoing. Because sometimes revenge isn't striking back. It's letting them run headfirst into the knife they don't know you're holding. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Claire brought him. She dressed like she was attending church, powder blue dress, pearls, that too bright smile. My son trailed behind her, looking worn down. And in walked the lawyer, young, polished, smug. "Mr. K," he said warmly, "I just wanted to go over a few documents with you. Nothing complicated. Just to make sure your affairs are in order." Claire placed a gentle hand on my shoulder like she was guiding a child. It's for your own good, Dad. I sat in my chair, blinked slowly, and let my mouth fall just slightly open. Affairs? I repeated, soft, like I'd never heard the word. The lawyer smiled the way people do when they think they're smarter than you. He slid the papers across the table. Power of attorney, sir. Just sign here, and your daughter-in-law can help manage your accounts, bills, and property. I picked up the pen. Let my hand tremble. Dotted the page with a crooked line that wasn't even close to my name. My son winced. Claire leaned forward eagerly, ready to steady my hand. Not today, I mumbled, setting the pen down. Too many papers. Confuses me. Claire's face flashed with frustration before she forced the smile back. It's okay, Dad. We'll try again later. The lawyer gathered his things quickly, clearly annoyed. But before he left, I asked in my soft, wandering voice, do you know symbols? Like circles with lines through them? He froze. Just a flicker. But I saw it. His jaw tightened before he smoothed it over. Can't say I do, sir. Liar. I leaned back, humming to myself, and let them leave, playing the part of a man who couldn't tie his own shoes. But when the house went quiet, I walked to my desk and pulled out the copy of the forged bank papers with that stamped symbol in the corner. Circle, 3 slashes. The same one I'd seen decades ago, the one tied to operations that never made it into history books. The lawyer wasn't just Claire's pawn. He was part of something bigger. And that meant I wasn't just fighting for my money or my dignity anymore. I was being pulled back into a game I thought I'd retired from. Which was fine. Because I still knew how to play. Claire must have thought she'd won the war when she convinced my son to book the evaluation. Just routine, she chirped. Peace of mind. But I knew what it was. If a doctor declared me unfit, she'd have the legal ammunition she'd been drooling for. The appointment was set for Friday morning. Claire drove me herself, humming off-key to the radio, her nails drumming on the steering wheel. I sat there quiet, staring out the window, letting her believe I was lost in thought. We walked into the sterile little office. The doctor was a man in his 50s, kindly face, clipboard in hand. He smiled at me like I was fragile porcelain. Mr. K, I just want to ask you a few questions, all right? Nothing scary. I nodded slowly, eyes cloudy. He started easy. What year is it? I squinted. 1970. Claire smirked. The doctor wrote something down. Then he asked, who's the president? I whispered, Nixon. Claire let out a little laugh. See? This is what I've been talking about. The doctor frowned, scribbling more notes. But then, he flipped to the last page of his form. All right, final test, I'm going to show you a symbol, and I want you to tell me if you recognize it. He held up a sketch, a circle with 3 slashes. My heart gave one hard thump in my chest. That symbol again. I leaned forward, let my eyes clear, and in a voice sharp as a knife, I said. Operation Glass Veil. Eastern Bloc. Safe houses marked with that insignia. Classified until 92. The doctor froze. His pen stopped mid-scribble. Slowly, he looked up at me with a face drained of blood. Claire blinked, confused. What? What is he talking about? The doctor closed the clipboard. Mr. K, he said quietly, may I speak with you, alone? For the first time in weeks, I let my posture straighten fully. No more tremble in my hands. No fog in my eyes. Just the man I really was, staring him dead in the face. And in that silence, Claire finally realized. She hadn't been testing me. I'd been testing her. The doctor ushered Claire out into the waiting room. She tried to argue, said she should stay, that she was my advocate, but his tone hardened. Ma'am. Outside. Now. She left, fuming, heels clicking like gunshots. The door shut. The room fell quiet. The doctor set the clipboard down and stared at me, his eyes sharp now, all the fake warmth gone. Where did you hear that phrase, he asked. Operation Glass Veil. I leaned back, calm. I lived it. He rubbed his jaw, the mask of the small-town physician cracking to reveal something colder. That symbol is not supposed to be common knowledge. I smiled. Neither am I. Silence. The kind that feels like a drawn pistol between two old operatives. Finally, he said, you know she's trying to have you declared incompetent. I nodded. I know. That's why I let her drag me here. He raised an eyebrow. You wanted this evaluation. I wanted you, I corrected. He blinked. Then, slowly, he smiled, not kindly this time, but knowingly. You left the trail. The fake note. The senile recording. The forged bank papers. I'd left them like breadcrumbs, not just for Claire to follow, but for the right kind of man to notice. The doctor leaned forward. If you're still half the man I've heard whispers about, you don't need my diagnosis. You need a witness. I tapped the clipboard. Then write the truth. Fit as a fiddle. Sharp as glass. And while you're at it, note the undue influence of my daughter-in-law. He didn't hesitate. His pen scratched across the page, a new kind of report being written, one that would burn her credibility to ash. When Claire came back in, expecting triumph, he handed her the paper. Your father-in-law, he said calmly, is of sound mind. Remarkably so. And I'd advise you to stop interfering in his affairs. The color drained from her face. I caught her eye, gave her a smile so faint only she could see it. The smile of a man who had just slipped the noose off his own neck and hung it around hers. The confrontation happened in my living room, a week after the doctor's visit. Claire barged in, dragging my son with her. She was shaking, wild-eyed, waving a crumpled piece of paper. You set me up, she spat. You think I don't know? The recordings, the notes, you're trying to make me look insane. My son looked torn, confused, exhausted. Claire, please. No, she snapped. He's manipulating all of us. He's been playing some twisted game. I stood slowly, cane in hand, voice calm. You're right, Claire. I have been playing a game. But you were never my opponent. You were my pawn. Her mouth fell open. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a neat stack of papers. You wanted power of attorney? Well, here are the bank statements. The forged ones you tried to sneak through. I laid them on the table, then tapped the corner. See this symbol? The circle with slashes? That's the signature of your lawyer friend's shell operation. Unfortunately for you, I've been documenting every step of it. I slid over another folder, the doctor's report. Patient is of sound mind. Evidence of coercion by family member. Claire's hands trembled. My son stared at the page like it was a live grenade. And then I delivered the killing blow. I clicked play on my recorder. Her own voice filled the room. From weeks earlier, when she thought I was asleep. Once the papers are signed, we can sell the house. He won't even know what happened. The blood drained from her face. My son turned to her slowly. Claire. She opened her mouth, shut it again. For the first time, she looked small. I looked at my granddaughter, standing in the doorway. Her little hand clutched the note I'd planted for her weeks ago, the one that said, Claire is trying to trick me. Please help. She held it out to her father, silent but certain. That was it. The final stone on the pile. Claire collapsed into a chair, sputtering excuses. My son's face hardened in a way I hadn't seen in years. Get out, he said. Quiet, but firm. Take your things and get out of this house. She tried to argue. She tried to cry. But he didn't budge. When she finally stormed out, slamming the door, the house felt 10 pounds lighter. I sat back down, poured myself a glass of scotch, and smiled. Because this wasn't just about saving my money, or my dignity. It was about teaching her, and everyone else, that underestimating an old man can be the most dangerous mistake of all. I opened my coded journal one last time and wrote. Final move complete. Checkmate. Claire neutralized. Family secured. Then I closed it, tucked it back into the drawer, and hummed the same song I'd hummed decades ago, waiting in the dark for an enemy to walk into my trap. Some games never change. And I never forgot how to win them.